Hello everybody and welcome back to another Blender Made Easy tutorial. Today we're going to be creating a low poly log cabin. So this image that you see on screen right now, we're going to be creating it. We're going to be adding a mirror modifier on the logs, an array, and then some particle systems at the end to create the stars in the sky. So this is a pretty fun tutorial and I'm going to be going a little bit faster than usual because it's pretty long. So I'm going to press X to delete the cube, press Shift C to make sure my cursor is in the center, and then I'm going to add in a cylinder. So press Shift A, we're going to go to Mesh and Cylinder right here. And before you do anything, before you move it or rotate it or anything like that, make sure you set the vertice count to 8 over here. That's really important because if you move this, if you move the cylinder just a little bit, this option disappears and you won't have it. So make sure you set the vertice count to 8 before you do anything. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is rotate this 90 degrees. So I'm going to go to front view, then press 5 to go to orthographic view, and rotate it 90 right there. Now I'm going to delete half of it. So go into edit mode, press Ctrl R, I'm going to add a loop cut right down the middle, and then right click to snap it to the middle, then press Z, press A to deselect, and then box select these vertices, then press X and delete them. And if you ever get stuck on what I do, just look down here and you'll be able to see the shortcut that I pressed. Alright, so now I'm going to go over to the modifier tab, click add modifier and mirror. And is it the Y? Nope, is it the Z? It's the Z, so make sure it's set to the Z right there. And now let's do a little bit of modeling and then we will make it go up. So I'm going to go into edit mode, I'm going to alt right click and I want to inset this face because I want the material inside the face to just be a lighter brown color than the outside. So I'm going to press I to inset it. Go somewhere around there is probably fine. Then click on the new material. Then click on the plus and click new. So there's two material slots now. And this material, I'm going to assign it to this section. Make sure it's selected. If it's not selected, just alt right click and you'll select it. This color is going to be a light gray color. Somewhere around there is probably good. Maybe a little bit darker. There we go. Then I'm going to select this one, and this is going to be all the other colors. I'm going to select here and have it a darker brown color, maybe something like that. Yeah, somewhere around there. So if you want the hex code, just look right there. It's 56402C. And let's check the preview. That looks pretty good. And one last thing I'm going to do is set the settings on the viewport to be the same color so we can actually see it in the 3D view. So I'm going to go over here to the viewport color, click the eyedropper tool, and select this color. Same thing here, click the eyedropper tool and select this color. There we go, perfect. And it's on the same, yep, it's the same on the other side. Awesome, so let's start adding logs to our house. I'm gonna scale this down and press S, X, and scale it along the X axis. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Right about there is probably good. Now let's add an array modifier. So go to add modifier, click array, and make sure, oh, the Z is good, it's already on 1. So make sure it's going up. Actually, no, it's going down. I need to change this to -1, so it's going up. There we go. And if you're confused why the X coordinate is going up, that's because we rotated it 90 degrees. If we were to press Control A and click rotation, then it would be going in this direction, and we would have to change the Z. But since we didn't apply the rotation, it doesn't really matter. Alright, so I'm going to set this count up to 7 right there, and then I'm going to apply this. There we go. So now what we want to do is just add a little bit of variation in the logs. So we can come over here, maybe grab we'll just go press Z to go into wireframe, press C for circle select. We'll grab that, maybe bring it out just a little bit, maybe rotate along the Y. Just give it some variation. We don't want anything to be the same. So press A to deselect, go like this, right there, deselect you. Yep, there we go. Maybe bring this one in a little bit. All we want to do is just make this random so it's not the same. So there's variation and it gives some visual interest. Like there we can see there's different heights and different lengths. So up here we can select this one, maybe rotate along the Y a little bit and drag it back. There we go. So there's different sizes. Now another thing that we could do is select an entire one by hitting L and then press S, Shift X, and that will just scale it along the Z and the Y but not the X. So Shift X, maybe just drag it down a little bit, go into front view and make sure it's on top of this log. So we'll do the same one for this one. So L, and then scale, shift X, and drag it in. Then drag it down, and then we also have to drag all of these ones down. So select them all, hit Control L, so it selects every single one of them, and we'll just drag it down so it's right on top. There we go. So that looks pretty good to me. What I'm gonna do now is duplicate this. So press Shift D, Y, and drag it over here. There we go. Then I'm going to press Shift D, right click, go into edit mode, press A to select everything, rotate it like this, and then we'll just place it right here. And make sure that you have this section coming over this way, because over here there's just an empty one and I don't feel like adding a face. You can do that if you want to. I'm not going to worry about that because it doesn't really matter, because you're not going to see it in the camera view. And also we need to scale this along the Y, so press S, Y, and just scale it along the Y, drag it this way a little bit, scale up a little bit on the Y, right about there. And go into front view, make sure it's lined up, so we'll drag it this way a little bit. That looks pretty good to me. All right, so there we go. We have our 4 walls. Now let's start working on the door. All right, the next thing that we're gonna be doing is adding a door right in the middle. So press Shift A, we're gonna add in a plane, then press R, X, 90, and enter. Now we wanna make sure this is in the middle, so position it right here, right in this blue arrow. We'll drag it up a little bit, right about there, and we'll scale it along the X so it's a little bit skinnier. How does that look? That looks pretty good to me. So go into edit mode, and let's just drag it forward so we can actually see it. I'm gonna do a little bit of modeling. So we're gonna hit Control R, add 2 loop cuts right down the middle, press X, or scale X, and then drag it out. I wanna have it a little bit of a frame. And next I'm going to add in 2 loop cuts over on the top area. So drag these up, and we'll scale them along the Z a little bit. Then we'll add another loop cut right here. Okay, so I want to drag these down. So we have 4 squares right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to press I twice to inset all of these, and then I'm going to drag them backwards. There we go. So we have like a window sort of thing here. Next, I'm going to drag these out a little bit so we have a frame, and I think I will grab this edge and extrude it up, and then do that. So Alt right click, and Alt right click. So we have this selected. I'm going to press E to extrude, and there we go. So we have this frame. Awesome. And one last thing that we need to do is hold Alt right click on this, yep, and then drag this, hold on. I think we just have to extrude it. So press E to extrude, Y, and just drag it back a little bit so it's inside. Perfect, and then we'll drag this back. Make sure though it is not clipping through, so right here is where we need to stop. Awesome. Now let's add in a window. So I'm gonna come over here and press Shift A. We're gonna go plane, R, X, 90, and enter. This plane we can keep the dimensions, so just a square. And I want to do a little bit of modeling here too. So I'm gonna go to edit mode, Control R, add a loop cut here, Control R, add a loop cut there. Then select all of these faces and press I twice, and then drag them back by hitting E, Y, and drag them back a little bit. Perfect. And then lastly, we have to make it so it connects to the cabin. So go into vertice select mode, Alt right click. Yep, that selected the entire thing. Press E, Y, and drag it into the cabin. Perfect. Then we'll just duplicate this. So Shift D, X, and move it over here. Great. So now what we're going to do is the materials for these planes. Let's do this one first. So we'll just come over here and we'll grab the dark material, and for the inside windows I want to add in a emission shader so it looks like there's a really nice warm color coming from inside the cabin. So I'm going to add a plus, click new, and I'm going to change this to emission and set the color to something like this. We'll set the strength to about a 4, Shift Z to see how that looks, and also assign that. There we go. Look at that. That looks really nice. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Actually, I'm just going to delete that one. Shift D this one. I probably should have done that first. And so they have both the same materials. All right, this one, I'm going to add the dark one. So we'll go with the dark, add a plus, and we'll grab the lighter one, and then we'll grab the emission shader right here. So first, Windows, we'll select them, go to the material and click Assign. And is that all I want to do? I'm also going to add in a little handle right here. So press Shift A, we'll add in a cube, scale the cube down, maybe scale it along the Z a little bit, and drag it in, scale along the X. And this one can be the lighter color. There we go. Perfect. All right, so there we go. We have our windows and we have our door. So now we need to create the roof. The roof is pretty easy. All it is a mesh and plane. We'll drag it up here. We'll add in a loop cut right down the middle, and we'll just drag that loop cut up. There we go. And scale it up, place it here, something like this. Make sure it's lined up, so press SX and scale it along the x-axis somewhere around here. All right, that looks good. And now we need to add in a solidify modifier to give it some thickness. So add a solidify modifier, bring up the thickness so it clips just a little bit inside. Great, and this can be the same dark brown color as the rest of the house. But now you're probably wondering, what are we going to do over here? Well, we're going to Shift D these logs, Shift D, and bring them up. Go into side view by pressing 3. And just kind of go right here. Now go into edit mode and delete these top ones. So box select them, hit Control L and press X and delete the faces. Now we're going to have to individually drag these in. So go into face select mode, we will drag these ones first. So drag them in. And then there's a cool option if we type in shear, and I did that by pressing space and then I typed in shear. This will move the faces, but it's not going to add any thickness to our log. So that's a really handy trick. So I'm just going to do that. Same thing. Actually, first we have to make all of these a face. So box select them, press F so there's a face. And now we'll do the exact same thing. So box selected, make sure this one, not that one. Can I? Oh my gosh. There we go. Okay, so go into side view again and do the exact same thing for all the others. So press space, type in shear, and we'll just go like this and then drag it in. And there we go. So that is what it looks like. Perfect. All right, so now I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to add in a ground. So add in a plane. Let's move it down and scale it up. It's a little bit big, probably somewhere around here. Then go into edit mode and press W and subdivide this a bunch of times. Somewhere probably there is probably good. Then I'm going to add in a displacement modifier. So go to the add modifier, click displace, click new, and make sure the texture is set to clouds. And look at that, perfect. Okay, so we need to turn the strength way down. Somewhere, it's still way too high. I think we have to apply the scale, so press Control A, apply the scale. There we go, so everything's a little bit less. And maybe 1.5. That is probably good. All right, so now let's position the camera so we know what else to add into the scene. So I'm going to position it right about here. So hit Control Alt 0, and we'll drag it back a little bit, drag it down. Right about here is probably good. Maybe move it up a little bit, like that. Let's just press Shift Z to see how this looks. It is looking pretty good so far, but I want to add in a couple trees over here. All right, so now let's create a tree. So I'm gonna go to a new layer by pressing 2, or just come down here and click the new layer. Then I'm gonna press Shift A, I'm gonna add in a cylinder. This cylinder, I'm gonna change the vertex count to 5. So there's only 5 vertices. And then I'm going to scale it way down and scale it along the Z so it's up a little bit. So this is gonna be our stump. So go into edit mode, I'm going to select this vertice, or this loop press E to extrude, right click, and scale it out. Then I'm going to press E, bring it up, and scale it inwards. Then press E, right click, scale it out, and drag it down. Then press E, drag it up, scale it inwards. We just have to keep repeating this process until we get the height that we want. So something right here, and drag it in. E, scale it up, bring it down, scale. This part is a little bit tricky because sometimes your tree looks terrible. So just play around with it. Make sure you get the size right and there's nothing like too far, there's no unevenness, and you should be fine. So right about there is probably good. And this is a little bit tall, so I'll drag this down, and then I'll scale the entire thing up and go right here. Okay, so there we go, we have a tree. So now I'm gonna right click on it, and the material is just gonna be a green material, a dark green, somewhere around here. And this part down here is just gonna be the same brown that we applied for all of the log cabin. So just add a new material, we'll go dark and assign that. Shift Z to see how it looks. There we go, awesome. So now I'm going to move this to layer 1 and we'll just duplicate it a little bit. So go into the camera view, and I probably want one right here, and I probably want a couple over here. So go into top view, we'll place this one here, rotate it a little bit, Shift D, maybe scale it up, move it over here, Shift D again, scale it this way. You can also scale it along the Z a little bit just to give it some variation. Then I'll grab all three, Shift D over here, Shift D. We're kind of making a forest, Shift D, rotate it all the way around. We just want to add some variation so nothing looks too uniform. There we go, look at that, awesome, cool. So lastly, one more tree over here. Go into camera view, make sure it's in the ground. Make sure all of these are in the ground as well. They're all floating, so box select them all like this and drag them down so they're inside the ground. Great, we can also delete the ones over here since you can't even see them. So delete those. Okay, so now what we're going to do is create the world settings, like the nodes over here. We'll create a sky, and then we will do the stars at the end. So I'm going to go use nodes. I'm going to change this to a sky texture, and this is a really cool node. If we press Shift Z, we can already see like a really cool sky texture. There we go, that looks good, but it's too light. I want it to be like a nighttime scene. So I'm going to change the strength to about a 0.1. We'll see how that looks. That's pretty good. And I think that is good. I also want to duplicate these a couple more times, just in the background. Maybe scale them up a little bit. Maybe scale this one up, just so we give it some more stuff to kind of block the view. That looks good. All right, so now we're going to do the particles. So go over to a new layer and press Shift C to snap my cursor to the center. Then I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to add in a UV sphere. This is going to be our emitter, our object that the particles are going to be on. So I'm going to scale it up, go into edit mode, and then press Shift D, and we're just going to duplicate this a bunch of times, just like this. This is a really cool trick that I saw somewhere, where if we just add a bunch of cylinders like this, it will give us a very quick variation of depth and scale of all of these particles. So just do this a bunch of times, and there we go. Now I'm going to go to another layer, press Shift A, I'm going to add in an icosphere. Now before you do anything, make sure the subdivisions is set to 1. Then we're going to go a new material and change the type to emission, and the color, we can just go a nice yellow color. The strength is fine at 1. Now we'll go over back to layer 2, right click on this and go to the particle systems and click new. Make sure this type is set to hair, and the object, it's going to be an icosphere. So type in icosphere, should only be 1, and there we go. The size is a little bit big. Also, I want to turn on advanced, and we'll bring the size down a little bit more. The random size we will bring up, so there's more randomness, they're not so big. We'll press Shift Z. That's looking pretty good. make sure this emitter is turned off, so it will only show the particles. There we go, but there's quite a lot, so I'm going to change the count to only 200. We'll see how that looks. That is pretty good. Maybe a little, that might be a little bit too much though, so I'm going to go 120. Shift Z one more time. Alright, so let's go to layer 1 and we'll position this in the background somewhere around here, rotate it a little bit, go into front view, and like this. Shift Z and we'll see how that looks. Look at that, we have stars in the sky. That's pretty cool. We'll move them down just a little bit though, so we can see a couple more. Move them down right about there. Awesome, look at that. Very cool. I'll also scale it a little bit so there's more showing up. All right, very cool. So that is almost it. I think this is a little bit dark, so I might add a area lamp right in the middle so we can just see the ground a little bit better. So right here, we'll just go to here, area, the strength. We'll check the strength. We'll press Shift Z. Strength is really high, so let's change it to 20. And we'll place it maybe right in the middle, right here next to the house. There we go, so it has more of an effect. And one last material that I forgot to do is the plane, so we'll right click on it, click new, and the material we can just go mix shader and diffuse and glossy. The factor I'm going to set to 0.1. And I think that is it. This is kind of like a snow ground or something, a cabin out in the woods with snow, I guess. That could be something. I think for my final scene, I added like a snow on top of this, and I think I added another window. But you guys can do that on your own. If you made a cool image out of this, let me know. But before I end the tutorial, we're going to render it, and we'll see how it looks. So the sampling, I'm going to change it to 500. The clamp, I'll leave the clamp as it is. The light paths, right here, I'm going to turn off reflective and refractive. I don't know why that's always turned on. I just turn it off because it's a habit, and also I think it looks better. It saves memory too. And save it by hitting Control S. I'm just going to save it to my desktop, call it cabin tutorial, and render. So this is going to take a little bit, so I'm going to pause the video until it's done. Alright, the render is finished and this is what it looks like. It is pretty good. I really like how the stars look and the lighting is pretty good, but the colors, it needs to pop more. So what we're going to do is go over to the compositor, click use nodes and backdrop, and we're going to do some color grading and just making everything look a lot better. So the shortcut to add a viewer node is Control Shift left click on the render layer, and that will add it in. So what I'm going to do first is add in a glow around the windows to give it that warm kind of feel. So go to filter and then go to glare. We're going to add it in right here, and I'm going to change this to fog glow. So this will add it in, and there we go, we can see it. That is looking pretty good, but it's a little bit high, so I'm going to bring the threshold up by 2. And yeah, so that changes that color. Hold on a second. If I change this back to 1 and I bring the size down, yeah, there we go. That is what I want. Okay. So instead of bringing the threshold up, bring the size down to 6, so it's a smaller glow, but it still looks pretty good. Now I'm going to add in a, let's see here, hue saturation value. I'm going to plug that in here. The value I'm going to bring up to 1.5. There we go. And the saturation I'm going to bring up to 1.1. I'm not going to do that. Never mind. Let's go 1.2. There we go. And we'll plug that in here, and then we will grab a, where is it at, brightness contrast, plug that in here, and we'll bring the brightness up to 1 and the contrast up to 1, up to 2 maybe. There we go. The brightness we'll bring back down to 0.1, and there we go. I think this might look better without it. There's like no difference. Okay, so now I'm going to add in last a color balance node, and this is where we can add in all of the color correction that we need. So first off, I want to boost the shadows because they're just a little bit dark. So I'm going to boost the shadows. That doesn't look the way I want it to look though. If I brighten the shadows, bring it in over here maybe. No. Control Z that. Okay, let's try boosting the highlights just a little bit. And the overall midtones, we will give a warmer color. Okay, that looks pretty good. The highlights, I will give a bluer color. And shadows, somewhere around here. All right, that looks pretty good. Is there anything else I want to add? I don't think so. Yeah. All right, so let's go back to the default view, and this is before, and this is after once we've added the effects. And you can see that the glow really adds to the image. So you guys can go ahead and play around with the scene. You can add maybe some snow up top here, maybe like a lake over here. I'll show you guys my final scene here. I'm opening up a new Blender file, and it was not here. Hold on, where is it at? Snow cabin, right here. So for my final scene, what I did is I added you can see the stars over here, and I added a couple clouds. I added some snow up here, a roof object with another window. I added a little bit on the trees. You can see there's some snow on the trees. And over here, I added like a little lamp, a fishing pole, and a tackle box. And then right here, there's like a lake. So that's what I did for my final scene. You guys can go ahead and play around, add to this as much as you want. With low poly, you guys can really do anything. Like, there's no limitations. You can do tons of crazy colors, anything that you want. So go ahead and play around with it, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.